Hello, welcome to today's group class. We're going to be looking at some types of goal today. We're going to start off looking at goal types and then we'll move into skill classification. This will then set us up quite nicely for our next class, which is going to be based on SMART targets. So how we can actually set a target according to that acronym, according to SMART. But before we do get on to those, we are going to be looking at different goals. So how we can decide on what to aim for, either personally or as a coach, or talking in regard to a performer. How do we actually decide on what to aim for? What is it that we actually try and achieve with training, with performance, to suit us or to help us in our quest for progress and getting better. So we're going to jump straight in, and we are going to look at. Get rid of that. There we go. Look at the specific objectives for today. So if I just move myself out of the way there. So all of us, by the end of this lesson, we should know the definitions. So these phrases that you can actually use in your exam to define a performance goal and an outcome goal. Okay, SMART targets, like I just said, that's going to be more for our next session, but we will sort of refer to them very loosely today as well. So we'll start using that language of performance goal, outcome goal, and SMART targets. And most of us, on top of performance and outcome goals, we should be able to evaluate, okay, that means sort of assess the pros and cons, evaluate the use of each goal. So when or who should use a performance goal, and when and who should use an outcome goal, because they're not the exact same. They are slightly different, and we can use them to benefit progress and motivation in different scenarios. So we will move on without further ado. So what is a goal? Well, it's a predetermined target. It's premeditated. It's thought of before the event actually comes into fruition. So it's a predetermined target or criteria of success that a performer aims to meet during or as a result of a performance. Now, that's the overall definition of what a goal is. Now, we're going to look at sort of splitting this into two schools of thought, performance and outcome. But on the whole, if we just think of what a goal is and how a performer or a coach can use it to their effect, it's writing down, it's a plan. What am I looking for? What am I getting out of this competitive scenario? What is it that I'm looking for? How can I measure myself in regards to my own performance, in regards to other people, in regards to the league table? What is it? What am I aiming for? So a goal is something that we think up beforehand, we write it down, we perform, and then we compare that performance with whatever it was that we wrote down, that predetermined thought. And with goals, we might see things such as these. So I want to be more confident. That could be one. I want to win. I don't want to lose, the positive and the negative. Something to achieve, something to avoid, something that you'll learn more about if you take GCSE to the next level with motivations. Let's avoid relegation. I want to play for the first team. You're fed up of playing for the second team or the third team. You want to get into that top team. I want to be stronger, if we're talking about individual fitness goals in the gym, let's say. Or if we're talking about judo or karate or martial arts. To be stronger is a good goal to aim for. And I want to play off scratch. So golfers, we have this system called handicapping, where you can play against anyone you like, really, and your handicap is basically your average performance, and judging on how well you played that day, you can give yourself a little bit of leeway based on your handicap. Scratch means you don't get one. What you score is what you score. There's no added bonus of playing for handicap. So we've got sort of seven ideas here, 7 goals, 7 valid goals that people might choose to aim for. They're not necessarily SMART targets, which we will get to at some point, but they're not necessarily measurable. They're not specific really. They're quite generic, but they're still valid goals. So imagine if you were going into a performance and you said to yourself, one of these, now that's adequate. If you were walking out the tunnel onto a football pitch and you're thinking to yourself, I want to win, that's a goal. You might be heading out thinking, I don't want to lose. Or if you've got a big game coming up and there's relegation or promotion on the table, then that might be coming into your head as well. So they are all valid. They're not the most accurate or the most detailed, but they are usable. But not all goals are the same. We've got this difference between goals that just rely on us and goals that rely on the outcome. Okay, and I know we've got these words, performance and outcome goals, and we're going to go into more details on these now. But you need to bear this in mind. Not every goal is created equal. They don't all rely on the same data when you're working out if you've passed or failed, if you've achieved or not. So these two lines here, some rely on you and your performance, others rely on how you compare to others. So let's just say, and we'll cover this in a second, but let's just say you play a game of tennis and you're playing against your partner or an opponent, and you win. And you go home and you're feeling pretty happy about yourself. You hit your goal of winning. But what if your opponent just wasn't naturally as good as you, or they haven't trained as hard as you? Would you still feel successful? If your goal was merely to win, but you won with a real subpar performance, have you actually succeeded? So there are different frames of or perspectives even. From looking at performances. So win or loss isn't everything. So we have these two here. Goals you can control and goals dependent on others. And herein lies our differences between performance goal and outcome goal. So performance goal being the goals that you can control. You are in charge of your performance. It doesn't matter what happens with your opponent. It doesn't matter to do with anything with luck or the effort that someone else applies or a fluke. None of that matters. The environment or the external factors don't matter. There are some goals that only you can control. For example, a goal of I want to be more confident. It doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. If a goal of yours is to become more confident, then it might be through training. It might be trying new things. It might be reviewing in a journal your trials and tribulations. It's your action and your process that will achieve that goal. I want to be stronger. I want to play off scratch. These are all individual. It doesn't matter what is going on around you. You can control your success. You can meet the demands of these goals. You can meet the success criteria. If we think back to the first slide, what is a goal? It's a predetermined target which you try and meet. And can you evidence that you've met that predetermined target? Well, some goals, meeting those demands is entirely up to you, and they are our performance goals. Alternatively, we've got goals dependent on others. So where we're performing and we want to win. Well, if you want to win, that means someone else has to lose. Or someone else's performance has to be below the quality of yours. I don't want to lose, very similar. Again, you are pitting yourself against someone else. If you're losing, that means there must be a winner. You know, there must be a leaderboard or a scale of top and bottom. And if you don't want to come at the bottom, that must mean that you're trying to get on top of other teams and performers. Let's avoid relegation. Another one. It depends on other clubs, on other teams, on other performers. I want to play for the first team. Well, so do the 15 people above you in the picking order. So why should you play for the first team if the other 15 are also aiming for that and they pull out all the stops and they train harder, or they get a growth spurt and they're faster and stronger, or they're more confident, or they're more knowledgeable? That's on them, not on you. So even if you worked 100% and your progress was absolutely outstanding, you still might not hit that goal, because that goal is dependent on the actions and behaviours and outcomes of other people. So two different goal categories. One's completely in your control, and one's where the input of others determines success. So, performance goals. I want to be more confident. I want to play off scratch. I want to be stronger. Performance goals. You were talking about the process of you and you alone. Whereas outcome goals, we're looking at the effect, the event. We've got process and event. You know, performance goals are you working towards something. You know, it's almost intrinsic, the growth and the progress and the success criteria. The outcome of whatever it is you're doing doesn't matter. You could play the best game of your life in tennis. Let's go back to that tennis analogy. You versus your opponent. Your opponent loses, but they just played their absolute best. They played the best game of tennis that they've ever played. So why should they feel bad? You see it all of the time in the FA Cup in football. You know, lower league teams playing out of their skin. The best performance ever against a Premiership club, and they still lose 3 or 4-0. But their performance quality was outstanding. The outcome quantities, such as 3-0, 4-0, loss, bad percentage, bad shots on target, you know, these numbers that sort of pitch you against another team or your opponent, that's the outcome goal. So performance goals, these are the ones we're in complete control of. The presence or the success of your competitors does not matter. It doesn't matter who you're playing. It doesn't matter if they're the world record holder. It doesn't matter if they're miles better than you or miles worse than you. It doesn't matter. All that counts is you and your performance. They're you versus you. So we've got this phrase here in black. There is no social comparison. That's key for your notes, revision, exam. That there, social comparison, a really powerful exam phrase. And what it means is we don't look at those or others in society. That's quite a big word, but by society in the sporting context, we mean the people that we're competing against. So we don't need to compare ourselves to our competitors to gauge how well we've done. We compare our performance to our previous performances and your success criteria, that predetermined target. So they relate to the quality of your skill, the skill itself, not the product of your skill. So let's take a 100-metre sprinter. They might watch back their footage of them sprinting, and they might look at their stride length, their cadence, their rhythm, their body tension. You can see lots of things in a performance's quality. They might have lost, but they were running as comfortable as they've ever seen. So performance is the quality, whereas outcomes, these are your results. So what happens after you've put the effort in? You perform, you execute, you perform a movement action, you put it out there, you play. What happened? What was the overall result? So these are the goals that compare the results of your efforts to other performers. Did whatever you just do or complete, how did it compare to other people? So were you the winner? Were you the loser? Were you bottom? Were you fifth? Were you mid-table? Were you first to the ball or last to the ball? How did it compare? This is you versus them. You're not fussed about your own personal progress, really, with outcome goals. Not progress in the sense of skill development. You are interested in your progress in sort of skill application, you might say. Not so much the development and the acquisition. You just care about what results it brings. So these disregard the quality of your skill. It could be the worst performance ever, but you still ended up winning because of the environment, the situation, external factors such as luck, such as effort. So it doesn't matter how good you are, all that matters is the result and the outcome of your efforts. So summary, if you wanted to write down a few key things. Performance goals, they focus on the quality of the skill and there's no social comparison. Whereas outcome goals, they focus on the result and you compare the result of your skill execution to others. You tried your best, someone else tried their best, whose best effort on that day was better? And you set the goal of you want to be better. To what degree do you want to be better? So a phrase or a quote that we could use. The result doesn't matter, I just want to play well. It's a performance goal. I don't care if I play badly, I want to win no matter what. Winning is the important thing. The process or what you did to get to the win doesn't matter. Performance in purple and then outcome in gold. So generally speaking, outcome goals should be avoided. Why? Well, people don't like losing. So why would you set yourself a goal where you've lost the control of the outcome and there's a high chance of you losing? Because if you try your absolute best and you still lose because you're comparing yourself to someone superior to you, that's not going to be good for your confidence. It's not going to be good for your motivation. You're putting your success or failure into the hands of someone else. So in football, you could be neck and neck. You could be playing the best you've ever done, best performance quality. You're confident, fitness is high, tactical awareness and decision making sky high, and your opponent might not be playing that well. Naturally or collectively, they are just more skillful. But things go against you. Unlucky, a fluke decision, you slip up. Doesn't really matter what happens, but that could lead to a loss despite you playing better than you've ever played. So why would you take the risk and set yourself a goal that could set you up for failure despite you doing the best that you've ever done? So outcome goals can help with motivation, but they shouldn't be the only one, because we all like winning. Who doesn't like coming first? Who doesn't like that feeling of satisfaction of being one of the best? It is powerful motivation, but it shouldn't be the only motivator. It shouldn't be the reason to work and hone your skill to try and be better than someone else. Because what would happen if you set the goal of, I want to be the best, or I want to win this tournament? Okay, you win that tournament, are you going to stop training now? Because if that's your goal and you've hit that target, well, what's next? Now you might just plateau because you are the best, and you don't train anymore. You don't progress anymore. So you're not getting any better, even though you are the best in this area. Whereas a performance goal, we're always focusing on self-improvement. Look at this picture here. Unfortunately, this young chap, he's come fourth. He's got a trophy. Not very happy about it. Probably because he wanted to be second, third, or first. He set that goal of being in the top three, perhaps, or even the winner. He might have got all of his personal bests on that day. It looks like it's a track day. He might have got all of his personal bests, but his personal bests weren't good enough. So now he's got these huge feelings of failure, of demotivation, and as such a young performer, you do not want feelings of failure coming in or cropping in at this age, because you're at the developmental stages of life. Yes, he might be fourth, third, second, first, doesn't really matter. He might be good for his age, but in terms of where he is now and where he could be when he's 18, 19, 20, he's nowhere near as good as he can be. So if he suffers from demotivation now and he starts to associate this sport or activity with feeling rubbish because he's failed, because he's come fourth, because he's missed his goal, then he's going to stop. He's not going to want to train because he knows that if he keeps on training and keeps on turning up, he might experience this feeling of failure again. So, outcome goals. We try and avoid them more so. Okay, they can be used, but they need to be used almost in conjunction with performance goals. So they can be there to maybe highlight a season, or it can be a secondary or third level goal. Something there which can make us feel good, but if we don't hit it, it's not that important. Performance goals, on the other hand, these can aid progress. These can aid motivation, because we can achieve these, because we can set these so minor, like the incremental progress can be minimal. Whereas if we set an outcome goal of winning, and we're currently rubbish, that's going to take a long time to eventually achieve that. So to provide long-term motivation, we might set that outcome goal for 10 years down the line on my career highlight. But that's going to put loads of importance on reaching it. So to then break it down and provide the motivation, smaller performance goals can be added in. And by setting performance goals, it's down to you. If you succeed, if you meet the demands of the predetermined target, which is what the goal is, if you meet it, then that's on you. You can attribute that feeling of success and accomplishment and progress. That's your responsibility. That's going to be very powerful to making you turn up to training. And if you turn up to training, you're going to carry on seeing those improvements. A lot of the time as well, performance goals, they are linked with sort of qualitative language. So things that are very, not difficult or not hard, but it's more difficult to quantify them, to measure them, to put a number on them. So all the while we're using outcome goals, we're looking for scores, numbers, percentages, ratios. Or at least with performance goals, we can start to talk about confidence, comfort, rhythm, aesthetics. You might look at a performance from this week to one from last year, and you can tell it's just more fluid, it's more smooth, it's more effortless. There isn't really a number for that. There isn't really an outcome goal for that, but a performance goal of, I want to be able to see a visual improvement in my effortless movement, or the amount of effort that I apply to my movement. You can set that as a performance goal. You can watch the videos back and you can go, tick, yep, got it. Feeling of success, brilliant. So yeah, that novice there. So especially for novice performers, hugely important to use performance goals, because they're unlikely to be at a stage where they can win stuff, especially in the confines of legitimate sport. So a badminton player in the first year or two probably can't hold a rally for long enough or serve consistently enough to play a proper game. It's going to be more who makes the least mistakes. That's going to be the winner. So rather than setting the outcome goal, which you're setting them up for failure and experiencing this loss, set them up with performance goals. Set them up with, did you get your elbow above your shoulder every time you hit it clear? Yes or no? Well done. Are you implementing a new technique? Yes or no? Yes. Well, excellent. You've obviously listened, watched, remembered, and now applied that new technique into your everyday play. If you can do that with these next 5 or 10 techniques, you're going to be so much better. Performance goals for an expert then. They work for a novice because it protects their confidence a little bit, but even for the elite, these top echelon performers, the ones who are top 10, top 50, top 100 in the world, the ones who are winning, the ones who are actually experiencing outcome goals of first, second, third place, very powerful. It's probably going to be their profession, but where's the motivation coming from? For many of the dedicated, it's more down to, I want to be the best I can be. if I can shape my body, skill, mindset, fitness, if I can shape all of those things and become the best version of me, that's what I'm striving for. I don't care about comparing my version of my best self to someone else. That's not what I'm in it for. I want to build the best version of myself as I can. It's a personal challenge to become as good and high quality as I can be. The byproduct of that might be to achieve success, fame, fortune, accolades, world records. I've got Federer here. Long time world number one. That's off the top of my head, I think he's the longest reigning, or has spent the most days consecutive, or totaled up the most days as world number one. I might be wrong in there, but off the top of my head, he's won, I think, the most Grand Slams. But he is at the top of the game. Probably not anymore. He's starting to drift off a little bit. Who could blame him? He's had like a 20, 25-year career. But surely the fifth time that he wins a trophy isn't going to be the main motivator. There must be something else. And there is. It's that performance-related goal. He wants to sharpen his skills to become the most efficient and fluent that he can. I think he even said in an interview pretty recently, as he gets older, he's had to change his game because he can't train as much, because his body can't handle it as well. I think he's got a young family now as well, so he hasn't got the time to actually thrash out hours and hours of training time on the court. So he's had to adjust his game, his play. Now, in doing that, he probably would have suffered a little bit of a short-term loss in his performance quality. But if he was setting outcome goals, he would have readjusted his technique, lost a whole load, and then would have become demotivated, and he wouldn't have been playing as well, or playing as much, because what's the point? But not for Federer. He's in it to shape his game. He wants to see if he can adapt it. He's setting himself a personal challenge to get better, and he did. He suffered a couple of seasons of lower quality performance, and then it picked up again. He's not really too fussed about the outcomes. It's more to do with that performance, that personal challenge. So, to summarise performance goals and outcome goals. Performance goals, it's the quality of the skill, it's the process of the skill, it's not there for social comparison. Whereas outcome goals, they focus on the result. We're comparing the result that we just got. Doesn't matter how we got that result. We take that result, we compare it to our competitors. Did I win or lose? Where did I come? So it's not about the process, it's about the outcome and then the comparison of that. And then those two phrases there, the result doesn't matter, I just want to play well, or I don't care if I play badly, I just want to win no matter what. So that was performance goal, outcome goals, and we sort of touched on SMART targets there. We will do that in a whole lesson by itself, don't worry. And then hopefully now you can look at the pros and cons of each and using both types, performance and outcome. Largely speaking, performance and outcome, well, performance, good for everyone, especially the novices. Outcome goals, shouldn't really just use them by themselves, but adding some of them over a longer term or as a secondary goal to hit can be used as a good motivator as well. Right. We are now going to move into skill classification. Skill classification. So if I just get, here we go. All that's it, perfect. So skill classification. What we are aiming to do here is look at continuums. There we go. So first of all, definitions for skill and ability, to know the difference between the two, because there is a fine line between what one is and the other. And then what the four continuums are. Then we're going to pad that out with sort of the descriptions and characteristics for each continuum, and then by the end we're going to be dropping sports into it, and we're going to be talking about what one skill movement could be on each of those four continuum. Now you might be thinking what a continuum is. Don't worry, we'll cover that. So first of all, skill versus ability. Well, ability, easiest way to think of this is what you're born with. It's naturally occurring. Skill is then when you take an ability, a natural tendency or capability, you take that natural thing, you then shape, refine, improve, train it into a skill. So we take what we're born with, we then focus on developing it into a more refined, precise and thoughtful skill. So ability, a natural means and awareness to do something. You're born with it. It's pre-existing. It's your physical makeup. It's your brain's makeup. It's the brain's wiring. If you're capped and you're 5'8", that's your physical limitation. Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. If you're 6'5", that could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. But it's your physical attribute. You're born with that. It's innate. Abilities. Look at some of these examples here. Even as a kid, you could probably watch primary or secondary playtime, and any students that are playing some sort of tag or it or stuck in a mud. Most people, if they were brought up like 99% of the population, they can walk, stand, run. So you can stand, you can walk, you can run into space when playing tag. If someone is on and they're running towards you, you instinctively know to run away from them or to run into a space. Let's move my face out of the way here. So you have this innate ability to be able to do something. You have this ability to recognise danger, threat, to recognise safe space, and then to be able to move yourself into it. Now, a skill in this context would be, there's actually there's a sport on it now. If I get a chance, I'll drop a link to it into the description of this. It's like World Cup tag, or there's now leagues and tournaments about it and tag, where you've got teams of players and you've got like an assault course in the middle, and it's tag. The person running away has to be evaded, or has to evade the catcher for, I think it's 30 seconds. But you're now developing, you're talking about skill development with tag and it. You can train tactically to look at someone's body position and then anticipate, are they moving left or right? You can then make a decision on what evasive action you can take. Can you improve your flexibility to be able to hit some more curvy, bendy body positions to dodge the outstretched arm? Can you think ahead if you're playing multi-person? Well, I can recognise 4 or 5 different people around me. I can weigh up the pros and cons of running in different directions. I can notice where my teammates are all going, and you make a decision based on all of this information. That's a skill. You're applying thought. You're making decisions. You're responding to the situation. You can then go to the gym and improve your speed, your fitness, your agility, your power, your reaction time. You can improve all of these components of fitness so that you've now got a better skill set to then apply with the decisions that you make in that same tag concept. Now that's tag. And hopefully you can see just how, you've got a basic ability, you can do it. You can walk, you can run, you can sit down, you can stand up, you can hold something, you can put something down, you can walk forwards. But then to refine all of those things into a skill. You become better at something. So some examples. An ability, a naturally occurring ability, is coordination. Can you close your eyes, hit your finger and touch your nose? That's a natural ability. But if we were to then refine that and train coordination, can you play badminton? So if someone was to throw a shuttle at you and you've got a racket, so an extended object, can you then swing that in a way to then meet the trajectory and hit that shuttlecock? Yes or no? If you can't, then you probably haven't refined your coordination skill. If you have, then you have developed that as a skill. I'll put the 1500 metre down there as a skill, because most people, and in my role as teaching, I've seen a lot of classes. I'm teaching them 1500 or the 800 or maybe a greater distance, and you try and tell them, you try and tell your students, like year 6, 7, 8, 9, don't go sprinting off. Conserve your energy, pace yourself. But they don't understand the pace. They can't conceptualise how long they're going to be running for and how that might make them feel tired, fatigued. So what they do instead is think, I want to get to the front of the pack and go sprinting off and see how quickly I can do it. They get tired, they end up walking. They haven't got the skill of running and thinking tactically about the 1500. They can run, no problem. They have the ability to run, but they can't think tactically about it, and they haven't got good cadence, stride length, head positioning, body positioning. It's not refined. They haven't improved it. It's not a skill yet. So what is a continuum? We know that we have abilities, we know that we can develop these into a skill, but now we need to be able to talk about skills, in relation to each other. How do we compare them? Well, we use things called continuums. And a continuum is this sliding scale. We've got two extremes of the class or the category. So let's say, for example, you've got 3 here. Okay, it's going to be your emotion or feeling. Now, that in itself isn't one or another. It's a thing. It's almost like an object. Well, you can be positively happy or negatively sad. You've got two extremes of the category. Hot or cold. The category, temperature. So where are you on the continuum of temperature? Are you over here because you're hot, or are you over here because you're cold? This sliding scale. You don't always have to, you don't have to be at all one or the other. You might be, actually, I'm feeling okay today. I'm not massively happy, not massively sad, I'm pretty neutral. And we can do the same things with skills. So first of all, we need to know what the categories are. What are the categories that we can talk about a skill with? So we need a way to analyse the skill. And we've got these four categories which we're going to go on to in a second. So why do we want to classify a skill? Because then we can start to break it down. We can start to compare it to another skill. If we can look at what the nature of a skill is, that can inform our decisions on how to train it or how to teach someone, how to set up the training environment or the learning environment to better suit the person trying to learn the skill. Now, for example, if, I think, where is it, in blue, I think here, there we go. If a skill is used or executed in and around other people, so for example in a game, an invasion game, basketball, netball, rugby, football, hockey, if you were to apply a skill or execute a skill, a lot of the time you're not just going to be able to do it in isolation. It's going to be dependent on your teammates, the opponents, the ball speed, the ball position, your level of fatigue. All of these factors influencing how and what skill you execute. Well, if that's what it's like in a game, then when we're training and improving it, surely the training session should be with all of these external factors and environmental situations going on as well. So by learning about what makes a skill, we can start to look at how we can teach them. So, our first one is difficulty or complexity. How difficult is the skill to transfer almost from a piece of brain data, let's call it, or a motor program you'll learn from A-level. How difficult is it to actually convert that thought into action? And we've got two ends of the spectrum. We've got simple, not a lot of thought, not a lot of accuracy, not a lot of timing involved. It's over quite quickly perhaps. Or we've got complex, more thought, more attention to detail, more things going on in different directions at different speeds. It's more difficult to transfer from a thought into an actual movement. Second category is the environment. How, that bit in italics there, how reliant is the skill on what is going on around them. So I just said there with football, netball, basketball, all of those invasion games, if you're practicing a skill from one of those sports, chances are you want to be doing it around other people, because when you're executing that skill in a game situation, there's other people around. So the environment can be open to others, open to external factors. So many things could come in at any split second to change your decision, to change your mind on how to perform that skill, when to perform that skill. Or it could be a closed skill. It's shut off from the environment. It's completely self-sufficient. You know, it's just by itself. It's closed off to everything else. Nothing else can get in and change how it needs to run. Third, muscular involvement. How many and how much are the muscles used? By much, I mean sort of contractile force. So it could be, for example, you know, a dart throw, for example, isn't going to require 100% recruitment of your tricep. It's not using it that much. It's using that big, fairly big muscle, and it's using it through the full range of motion, but it's not using it at maximum capacity. So we've got two ends of this perspective. Continuum. Fine and gross. If something is fine, it's very precise, it's small, refined. Whereas gross is big, large, powerful, lots going on. Whereas fine is small, delicate. And lastly, we have pacing. Who decides the pace at which and the timings of the skill? Is it down to the self, the person, the individual? Do they make all the decisions on when the skill starts, how quickly the skill is completed, and when the skill ends? Or is that determined by things going on around us, such as a starting clock, or a starting gun, or a defender coming towards us, or the environment? Pacing. So we've got the four categories, and then we've got the four extremes on each continuum. So difficulty, environment, muscular involvement, and pacing. So we're going to look at the difficulty first. So we've got the characteristics, which I sort of just mentioned there on the previous slide. So if we take difficulty and we look at a simple skill, there's normally one thought. And I've got the example there of that woman doing the squat. So the thought is, okay, start standing up, sink down, stand up. Or if we were to just use that last part, stand up. So if we were to put a chair into that image, she's going for a sit down and then a stand up. That's it, one thought. Whereas a complex skill, the person, the performer, is thinking about lots of different components of this skill, different links or triggers or cues. Lots of different things have to happen in a sequence or an order or at the same time. So you're almost running two lines of thought, making sure two parts of the skill happen correctly. With, put the rugby tackle down there. It's one thing to lunge in one direction, where the opponent is running towards you. It's another thing to then wrap your arms around the person and hold on tight. Then you need to work out or focus on which side you're going to put your head so you don't get clattered by a knee into your temple. Well, we've got that diver there doing a back somersault half twist. Two things going on at once: a backward rotation and a longitudinal rotation, or an end-to-end rotation. Two things going on. Look at that diver's arms. The arm positions are changing all the time. They're going up, down, sideways, and they're going over backwards, and they're turning around. That's three things, you could say. Their hips are hinging as well. Lots of things going on. So the more things that are going on, the more accuracy that's required, the more timing is required, the more complex it is. And the opposite for simple. So, environment. Open, and closed. Well, an open environment is where things can happen, things can change. Things other than the performer decides how that skill is going to actually run in the end. So I've put a phrase down on the left-hand side there, reliant on spatial awareness. So an open skill, the performer needs to be able to see what's going on, to actually take stock of their opponents, the positions, their teammates, the objects. They need to be watching everything that's going on, and then they make a decision on how best to respond and fit into this environment. The example there, basketball rebound. The performer, they have to watch the ball, they have to watch the trajectory, they have to try and anticipate where this ball is going to bounce off the rim to. They then need to decide when to jump, in what direction to jump. Do they need to try and sort of block their opponents at the same time? That jump is going to be very different to ones that they've done for the rest of the game. It's very unlikely that we repeat an open skill exactly the same as a time before. There's always going to be slight variation. We're always having to think on the spot. Whereas a closed skill is planned, predictable. We know exactly what's coming our way. We know exactly the step-by-step process that we need to follow to put this skill into practice, or to put it into reality. So I put Olympic weightlifting there. Now these performers, they would have practiced with the same bar, the same weight, the same technique over and over and over again. They will have a routine. They will go out to the bar, they will probably hit the shoulders, they'll probably chalk up, they'll probably check their laces, they'll probably hold onto the bar in the exact same way. It's all repeatable. It's closed off from the environment. They're in their own bubble. So when that skill needs to be executed, they know exactly what they need to do, what their role is, what the timings are. Everything else around them doesn't matter. Discus. The person knows the distance that they're allowed to use. They know how many practice swings they're going to have. They know the plane that they're going to be rotating in, how much force they're going to be generating. They know where they need to plant their foot at the right time to then release the discus. They know how the discus is going to feel in their hand. It's not like there's someone in front of the discus thrower jumping around and the discus thrower's got to try and anticipate and then try and throw it. They're closed off from the environment. Gross and fine. So muscular involvement. We've got fine skills, which have small muscles or low quantity of muscles with small movements, low force output. But how they contract needs to be so controlled and accurate. It's a very fine movement, small. Some examples, cricket spin bowl. You've got that big run up, gross. Then you've got the actual arm movement, which is sort of fairly in between. But then the last flick of the wrist and the roll of the wrist and the fingers over the ball, that's a fine movement. If you were to measure how far a finger is moving to spin a cricket ball, a couple of centimetres. And it can produce such a devastating bowl for the batter. Golf putt. Yes, it's your whole body, but the muscles which are actually controlling the swing are moving very slightly. Accuracy is so important. We're not just hitting a ball, we're hitting it along a precise line, gauging gravity, friction with the grass to try and end it in the cup. Gross skills then, the opposite. Large muscle groups, and there's a high force output. It's more a case of getting work done rather than the detail. So jumping as high as you can, gross skill. Cycling as fast as you can. Large muscle groups pumping and working in quick revolutions, high force output. You're not really thinking too much about the end result or the precision or the coordination. You just get it done, like running. You can sort of drift away into your own mind when you're going for a run or going for a walk. It's a fairly, I know this isn't the complexity, but it's a simple skill using our whole body. So a gross skill, Not a lot of thought, not very difficult in terms of the sequence of events, but lots of muscular involvement. And then pacing. So, who controls the speed? We've already got those characteristics there that we've spoken about before. Is the performer in charge, or is the environment in charge? If we go out for a jog, we decide when we put our shoes on and go out. We decide how fast and what the pace of our run is. We decide when we finish. Triple jump. Okay, so and so, you're up. As long as you do it within, I think, 30 seconds or a minute, you can start your run up whenever you want. You decide the speed that you run up. You decide the transitions of your hop, step, jump. A discus throw, again. A golf putt, again. A self-paced skill. If you're on the golf course, you can eye up your putt. You can take a little walk around. You can go talk to your caddy. Have a little discussion. Then you step up, have a couple of practice swings. Then you eventually take your shot. You decide what shot you take. How fast is that ball going to move? In what direction is that ball going to move? Up to you, the performer. Externally paced. You are not in control. It's other people. It's other factors. A 100-metre sprinter, yes, in the run, they're choosing their pace, but they only start their race when they hear the gun. So it's a performer responding to their environment. But they're the wicketkeeper. So wicketkeeper, they stand there behind the stumps, just behind the batter. They're jobless until the bowler has bowled the ball in a certain direction at a certain speed. The batter has responded and hit the ball and done whatever. They're waiting for other things to happen. They can't choose to catch a ball if the ball hasn't been bowled yet. Relying completely on external factors. So that's a look at some skills, at what classification they are and the characteristics of each one. But what you might have to do is to then be able to justify how you classify a skill. Okay, so you need to be able to say not just what category and what end of the spectrum a skill is, but why. What is it in that sport that tells you, or is the evidence that it is at that part of the spectrum? So it's three parts. If you take any sort of sporting movement and you're about to classify it, you state what class you're talking about, or that you think it's in. You then identify something about that class. That's everything that we've just done. So a characteristic of the class. You then need to highlight a part of the actual movement or sport or context that resonates with that characteristic of the class. So for example, a deadlift is a gross skill. I've stated it. Deadlift, gross. I've identified a characteristic of gross skill. Gross skills involve large muscle groups, create big movements, require little thought. So now I need to highlight what part specifically of a deadlift this sounds like. Well, when deadlifting, many of the limbs are required to extend. So from that crouch position up to that upright position, forcing most muscle groups in the body to contract. Large muscle groups. The majority of joints are extending simultaneously, therefore, the performer does not need to think about much. They're all gone from flexed to extended, all at the same time. That's one thought. Crouch, stand up. So lots of muscle movement, very simple thought. I've just highlighted what it is in the specific skill that is linked to the characteristic of the class. But remember, very few skills, I won't say very few, a lot of skills are not one end or the other. They might be very close to being all one type of class, but there might be an element of the other end. So you just need to sort of talk about both parts. So that 100-metre sprint example, for example, a 100-metre sprint, for example, the bang goes off, that's externally paced, but as soon as that's done, they then choose their cadence, their rhythm, their sprint speed. But they don't choose when it finishes. It's 100 metres, that's already predetermined. So, is it self-paced, is it externally paced? It's a little bit of both. It'll probably sit closer to self-paced because the run is the majority of it, but But the start and the finish, that's already predetermined. Or not predetermined, but the gun, the starting stimulus is telling that person when the skill has to start. So you might need to be able to justify which one is most relevant. So if we look at complexity, we're back. So start with simple. So a squat, simple skill. A simple skill is easy to replicate, completed with low amounts of thought, timing, and force. That's by characteristics of a simple skill. We then go into the justifications of what is it about a squat? Clear start position, clear finish point. Most of the joints are moving in the same direction at the same time. Very similar to a deadlift. In fact, this is basically a deadlift movement, but without the bar at the bottom. So the performer doesn't need to make decisions. It's a simple skill. Whereas the back somersault, half twist, I think that's a complex skill. Stated it. Identify the characteristic. Well, it requires a lot of accuracy. Because, this is us now justifying it, if we're inaccurate, or the timing is wrong, or the coordination goes out of sync, or we make the wrong decision at the wrong split second, injury or failure. So that performer has to be thinking so clearly, just as they take off, what they need to do at what exact part of their movement. Open and closed. We've got the characteristics up at the top there. An open skill could be a handball defender. Well, what is an open skill? One which responds to those or things happening around it. Well, with the handball defender, they are making decisions. They are watching their opponent, the attacker. What's their body position doing? Are they going to pass it? Are they going to shoot? When are they going to shoot? When do I need to reach up? Where do I need to reach up? Do I need to dive? All of these questions are always going around until the environment changes and the person makes a decision on how best to respond. Whereas closed, we've got that discus thrower. They know exactly what's going to happen. Nothing can change their routine. They step into that throw circle and they just repeat what they've done on the training ground hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of times. And then gross and fine. Well, sorry, not and, still one more. So a dart throw, fine skill. What is a fine skill? Small muscles, small movements, accuracy, precision. Well, with darts, we've got wrist, hand, fingers. Very fine movements. Not a lot of distance being covered by these muscles and bones. But the outcome, the intention is precision. We're aiming for a 1 to 2 centimetre area. Whereas a deadlift, like we just said with that other example, it's a gross skill. What is a gross skill? Large muscle groups, large movements, but little thought. The deadlift, all extending simultaneously, easy to think. Well, if they're all extending, that's a lot of muscular involvement. Timing is coordination, not the most important thing, not when we compare it to the back somersault. And lastly, pacing. We've got self-paced, externally paced, the triple jump, like we said. If we think about what self-paced is, it's to do with the timings. Who can influence the timing? What can influence the timing? With the triple jump, it's the performer. They're in complete control in their run-up, in their transition phases, in their landing, in essence, because the further they jump up, they've decided how high and far to jump, which determines how long they're in the air for. Whereas a netball defender, completely externally paced. Where are my teammates? Where do I need to go and mark? Who do I need to go and mark? Are they going to throw the ball yet? Are they going to throw the ball in 3 seconds' time? When is my marker going to receive the pass? Now? 10 seconds? 15 seconds? Do I just track them now? Or am I about to try and intercept? Externally paced. They're not in control. They are always having to respond and watch and listen and make decisions concurrently, simultaneously as everything going on around us, to then decide when and what we decide to act with. And that brings us to a bit of a close. So in this half, we looked at skill and ability. Ability natural, skill is learned and refined. We then looked at 4 skill continuum. We looked at the difficulty of a skill. We looked at the environment impact of a skill. We looked at the pacing of a skill, and we looked at the muscular involvement. And hopefully you now know the characteristics of each of those and the 2 extremes of those classes and categories, and you're now equipped with that state, identify and highlight technique so that you can justify any decision you make based on skill classification. And that is that. So I hope you found that lesson useful. That was goal types and skill classification. In next lesson, or future lessons, we will be doing SMART targets. So we're looking at that acronym, what it means to set effective goals and targets, and what constitutes one that benefits a performer using that SMART acronym. So I hope that was good. If you did like it and you found it beneficial, then obviously check us out on thepetutor.com, or if you are watching this from within inside the portal, then great, go back in. You've got the activity sheets in there as well. If you're not watching this on the portal, then perhaps head over to gcsepeportal.com and you can find lessons just like this, the lesson plans, the worksheets, the revision quizzes, everything that goes along with this you can gain lots from, and just check out the portal for that. I've been Johnny. This has been group class and master classes. Have a good rest of the day. See you later.